She was not the type of woman people expected to see standing beside a billionaire. When people imagined the wife of a man with such wealth, they thought of someone draped in designer dresses, with flawless makeup, and a lifestyle filled with diamonds and pearls. But she was nothing like that. She preferred to live simply. She wore plain clothes, cooked her own meals, and still kept habits from her small-town upbringing. Her name was Anna. She had grown up in a quiet neighborhood, where neighbors knew one another by name and children played outside until the street lights came on. Life there had been modest. Her parents worked hard, teaching her the values of kindness, honesty, and humility. Even after marrying into a life that many only dreamed of, Anna never forgot those lessons. Her husband, Richard, was one of the most powerful businessmen in the city. He was sharp, respected, and extremely wealthy. People admired him and feared him at the same time. But to Anna, he was not the man on magazine covers or the figure whose name was whispered in boardrooms. To her, Richard was simply the man who laughed with her over burned pancakes, who took long evening walks with her, and who listened to her stories even when they were about the most ordinary things. Anna never wanted fame or attention. While other wives of powerful men enjoyed being photographed at events, Anna often chose to stay home, reading a book or spending time with her family. She felt no need to compete with others or show off what she had. Yet, it was precisely the simplicity that made Richard fall in love with her. He had met many people in his life, women who tried to impress him, men who wanted something from him, and crowds who praised him only because of his wealth. But Anna had been different. She saw him not as a billionaire, but as a person. She didn't care about his money, she cared about his heart. And that, to Richard, was priceless. Still, the outside world often judged her. When she walked into gatherings with her plain dress and minimal makeup, whispers would begin. Some people would say she wasn't fit to stand in such high places. Others pitied her, assuming she wasn't capable of living up to her husband's status. But Anna never let those comments trouble her. She smiled, greeted everyone with warmth, and carried herself with quiet dignity. Richard noticed it, though. He always noticed how people looked at her, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with mockery. But he admired her calm spirit. Instead of trying to change her to fit into their world, he protected her right to be herself. One evening, the couple sat together in their living room. Anna was curled up on the couch, sipping tea, while Richard was going through some papers. "Do you ever feel," he asked, looking at her with curious eyes, "that you don't belong in their world?" Anna smiled faintly. "I don't need to belong, Richard. Their world is not my world. I am happy in mine. As long as I belong here with you, I don't care about anything else." Her words touched him deeply. He reached over, held her hand, and felt proud of the woman he had chosen to be his wife. Yet, life among the wealthy came with its challenges. The invitations to grand events, the fancy dinners, the charity galas all came with invisible rules. There were expectations, how to dress, how to behave, and how to present oneself in front of others. Most people followed those rules blindly, desperate to fit in. Anna, however, quietly broke them, not by rebellion, but by staying true to herself. There was one occasion when she attended a charity dinner in a simple blue dress. It wasn't expensive, just something she had bought because she liked it. While other women wore sparkling gowns and glittering jewels, Anna looked almost out of place. People stared. Some whispered. A woman even asked her softly, "Where did you get your dress? It looks different." Anna simply smiled and replied, "From a little shop I like. It makes me feel comfortable." Richard, who had been watching from across the table, noticed how gracefully she handled the remark. He felt a surge of pride. She never felt small, even when others tried to make her feel that way. Behind the scenes, though, not everyone accepted her presence. There were those who believed a billionaire's wife should look and act in a certain way. They wanted to erase the simplicity that defined her. They thought she was a shadow in Richard's shining life, someone who didn't match the image. But Richard knew better. He knew Anna was not a shadow, she was his light. Without her, all his wealth meant nothing. As the days passed, the couple's bond only grew stronger. Anna supported him through long work days, celebrated small victories, and offered comfort during failures. She was never impressed by his power, but always moved by his kindness. For Richard, that meant everything. At times, when he returned from a high-profile meeting where everyone treated him like a king, he longed for the moment he could sit across from Anna, eat her home-cooked food, and be seen not as a billionaire, but as a man who was loved. Anna's story was one of quiet strength. Though the world often ignored her, she carried herself with dignity that could not be bought. She didn't wear crowns, yet she carried the grace of a queen. She didn't chase after applause, yet her presence brought peace. Little did she know that soon, her simplicity would be tested in a way she had never imagined. A moment was coming when people would not just overlook her, but deliberately erase her, thinking she was unworthy. They believed they could make her disappear from a world of shining lights and high-class society. But they underestimated not only Anna, but also the man who loved her more than life itself. Richard was a man who could forgive many things, but disrespecting his wife was not one of them. And when the time came, he would prove to the world just how wrong they were. The city was buzzing with excitement. Newspapers and magazines were filled with headlines about the upcoming charity gala of the year. It was not just any gathering, it was the kind of event where politicians, celebrities, and the richest business people all came together under one roof. Deals were whispered over glasses of champagne, friendships were built on the dance floor, and photographs taken at the gala often appeared on the front pages the next morning. For most of the city's elite, being on the guest list was more than an honor, it was proof of status. To be invited meant you were part of an inner circle that few ever reached. Naturally, Richard received an invitation. After all, his name carried weight. He was not just another wealthy man, he was one of the pillars of the city's economy. His investments had created thousands of jobs, his donations had built schools and hospitals, and his influence stretched across industries. There was no gala that would dare ignore him. When the invitation arrived at their home, it was delivered in a thick golden envelope. Anna picked it up from the table, smiling at the fancy design. She opened it carefully and read the words written in elegant handwriting. The gala was to be held at the Grand Royal Hotel, the most luxurious venue in the city. The guest list included top officials, actors, and international figures. She looked up at her husband. "They've invited you again," she said with a gentle smile. Richard nodded. "Of course. It's the same every year." Anna hesitated. "Does it say anything about me?" Richard reached out his hand for the envelope. He scanned the invitation and frowned. There was no mention of Anna. The card was addressed only to him. He tried to hide his reaction, but Anna noticed. She laughed softly, trying to make light of it. "It doesn't matter, Richard. You know I don't care about these things. You can go without me." But deep down, a quiet sting settled in her heart. It wasn't about wanting attention. It wasn't even about fancy gowns or glittering lights. It was about respect. She was his wife, his partner in life, and yet her name had been left out, as though she didn't exist. Richard placed the invitation down and looked at her. "This must be a mistake. They wouldn't leave you out intentionally." Anna only smiled faintly. She didn't want to argue. "Maybe they just assumed you'd come alone. After all, these events are mostly about business." But as days passed, more details about the gala surfaced. Other couples received their invitations, husbands and wives, both names written clearly. Photographs of those golden envelopes began circulating on social media, with proud captions. "We're on the list," they wrote. Anna saw those posts quietly. She didn't complain, but she couldn't ignore the truth anymore. This wasn't an accident. She had been deliberately erased. One afternoon, she visited a boutique in the city. She wanted to buy a small gift for Richard's secretary, who was having a baby. While she was in the store, she overheard two women talking. They were wealthy socialites, their voices full of pride as they discussed the gala. "Did you hear?" one of them said with a sly smile. "Richard is coming alone this year." "Alone?" the other asked, surprised. "But what about his wife?" The first woman shrugged. "Oh, you know how it is. She doesn't really fit in. She's too simple, too plain. These events are about glamour and image. Honestly, I think the organizers did the right thing." They laughed softly, unaware that Anna was standing just a few feet away. Her hands froze on the gift she was holding. For a moment, she felt as though the floor beneath her had given way. But she quickly gathered herself, placed the gift on the counter, and paid for it with a polite smile. She walked out of the store, her head held high, though inside her heart ached. That night, Richard noticed her silence. She barely touched her dinner, and when he asked if she was tired, she only nodded. But he knew her too well. He set down his fork and studied her face. "Anna," he said gently, "what happened today?" She shook her head. "Nothing, Richard. It's just been a long day." He leaned closer. "Don't hide from me. I can see it in your eyes. Someone hurt you." Anna hesitated before finally whispering, "They don't want me there. They erased my name because they think I don't belong." Richard's jaw tightened. His usually calm face grew stormy. "Who said that?" She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "It doesn't matter who said it. I don't want you to fight with anyone because of me. I'm not upset, truly. I'm used to this." But Richard shook his head firmly. "No, Anna. You should never be used to disrespect. You are my wife. If they respect me, they must respect you. Without you, none of this matters." Anna tried to smile, but her heart swelled with both love and pain. She didn't want to be the cause of conflict. Yet she also couldn't deny the quiet ache of being deliberately excluded. The days leading to the gala were filled with chatter in the city. Designers rushed to complete dresses for the women attending, while chauffeurs polished cars for the big night. Photographers prepared their cameras, ready to capture every detail. Anna, however, carried on with her life quietly. She baked bread in the morning, read her favorite books in the afternoon, and took evening walks in the garden. She didn't speak of the gala again, though it lingered in her thoughts. Richard, on the other hand, was not so calm. He made a few calls, asked a few questions, and confirmed what Anna had already sensed: it had not been an accident. The organizers had deliberately left her out. They believed she was not the right image for their event. Richard said nothing to Anna about what he learned. But inside, his decision was already made. He would not let this pass. The night of the gala was approaching quickly. The city's luxury cars were ready to line up outside the Grand Royal Hotel, and the red carpet was being rolled out. Everyone who was anyone would be there. Everyone except Anna. The week of the gala finally arrived. The city was glowing with anticipation. Hotels were fully booked, designers worked around the clock, and jewelers displayed their finest pieces in store windows. Every newspaper carried stories about who was attending, which celebrities were flying in, and how magnificent the evening would be. For Anna, however, the days felt unusually quiet. She carried on with her normal routine, preparing meals, watering the plants, and writing in her journal. She didn't speak about the gala, but it hung in the air like an unspoken cloud. On one particular afternoon, she was invited to a friend's tea gathering. Most of the women there were wives of businessmen and officials. They dressed elegantly, wearing expensive perfumes and carrying purses that shone with designer labels. Anna came in her usual style, wearing a soft cream dress with a simple scarf around her shoulders. The conversation, of course, drifted to the gala. One of the women exclaimed excitedly, "I had to try on 4 different gowns before I decided which one to wear. My husband thinks I'm overthinking, but really, it's a big night. We can't look anything less than perfect." Another woman laughed. "Oh, absolutely. Everyone will be watching. And you know the photographers, they love to capture the wives just as much as the men." Anna sat quietly, sipping her tea, until one of them turned to her with a smile that was polite but sharp. "Anna, will you be attending this year?" For a second, Anna froze. She didn't want to embarrass herself, so she answered calmly, "Richard received an invitation." "Oh, only Richard?" the woman asked, raising her eyebrows knowingly. "I see." There was a short silence, but it was heavy. The other women exchanged looks, as if confirming something among themselves. A few forced smiles followed, and the conversation shifted again, but Anna had felt the sting. It wasn't just the missing name on the card, it was the way people saw her, as though she didn't belong in their polished world. Later that evening, when she returned home, Richard was in his study. He looked up from his desk when she entered. "You're late," he said softly. Anna smiled faintly. "The tea party went longer than expected." He studied her face. "Something happened. Tell me." She tried to brush it off, but he insisted. Finally, she admitted, "They know. Everyone knows I wasn't invited. And they seem pleased about it. As if I was never meant to be part of them." Richard's expression darkened. He stood up and walked toward her. "This is no accident, Anna. I've asked around. The organizers didn't forget. They chose not to include you." Anna looked down. "Because I don't fit in." Richard tilted her chin gently so she would look at him. "No. Because they don't understand what true worth looks like. They think it's about glitter and gowns. But you are more than that, Anna. You are the reason I am who I am today." Her eyes softened. She believed his words, but the world outside was louder. And no matter how much she tried to stay strong, the quiet insult burned inside her. The night before the gala, the city's social media filled with excitement. People posted their outfits, jewelry, and travel arrangements. "See you at the Grand Royal tomorrow night," one post read. "Can't wait to be part of the biggest night of the year," another said. Anna didn't look at her phone much that evening. Instead, she sat on the balcony, watching the stars. She thought about how different her life had become. Years ago, she would have been content with a simple dinner at home and a quiet evening. But now, being the wife of a billionaire came with expectations and judgments. She was not afraid of hard work or modest living, but the sting of being deliberately erased was harder to ignore. Meanwhile, whispers were spreading in high society circles. At a private salon, a few women laughed as they prepared for the gala. "Did you see Richard's invitation?" one asked. No mention of his wife. Finally, someone made a sensible decision. "Honestly," another chimed in, "she's sweet, but too plain. She doesn't know how to carry herself in these events." The organizers probably wanted to keep the tone elegant. They giggled, unaware that such cruel words carried deeper consequences than they could imagine. Richard, on the other hand, was far from laughing. That night, he sat alone in his office, thinking about the gala. He remembered the look on Anna's face when she told him about the tea gathering. The pain in her voice lingered in his ears. He picked up the phone and made a call. "Yes," he said firmly. "I'll be attending. But listen carefully, if my wife is not welcomed, Then I am not coming at all. There was silence on the other end, followed by an awkward reply. Sir, perhaps we can reconsider. No, Richard cut in. There is nothing to reconsider. Respect her, or lose me. He ended the call, his face calm but determined. The following day, while chauffeurs lined up outside mansions and women tried on their final touches of jewelry, Anna prepared breakfast like it was any other morning. She served Richard his coffee, smiling gently, as though nothing unusual was happening that night. But Richard had already decided how things would unfold. He would not let the insult pass. He would not let the world think his wife was invisible. As the sun set and the city's lights began to glow, cars filled the roads leading to the Grand Royal Hotel. Guests stepped out in sparkling gowns and tuxedos, their names announced with pride at the entrance. Photographers snapped pictures, and reporters described every detail. Inside, the ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, golden drapes, and music that echoed elegance. People mingled, laughed, and raised glasses of champagne. But there was one empty space that no one could ignore. The presence of Richard, the billionaire who always drew attention, was missing. Guests whispered, confused. Where is he? Did he not come? Soon, the organizers began to feel nervous. They knew the evening wouldn't shine the same without him. And worse, they didn't yet realize that their quiet insult toward Anna was about to turn into the biggest lesson of their lives. The night of the grand gala finally arrived. The Grand Royal Hotel glowed like a palace, its golden lights reaching out into the city streets. Luxury cars lined up outside, one after another, their polished surfaces shining under the camera flashes. Reporters stood eagerly by the red carpet, announcing the names of the powerful and famous as they entered the hotel. Senator and Mrs. Gray have just arrived, one reporter called. Another added, and here comes the famous actress Clara James, looking stunning in her diamond gown. The crowd clapped, cameras clicked, and the music from inside spilled out into the night air. It was the event everyone wanted to be part of, the event that defined social status. But inside Richard's home, the atmosphere was completely different. There were no photographers, no excitement, no rush. The house was calm. Anna sat by the fireplace, quietly knitting, while Richard stood by the window, his eyes fixed on the glowing hotel in the distance. Are you not getting ready? Anna asked gently, breaking the silence. Richard turned to her, his face steady. I'm not going. She blinked. Not going? But Richard, everyone expects you to be there. They've counted on your presence. He walked over and sat beside her. They erased your name, Anna. They tried to make you invisible, as if you're not worthy of standing by my side. If they don't respect you, then they don't respect me. And I refuse to honor them with my presence. Anna put down her knitting, touched by his words. But this gala, it's important for business. People might talk. They might judge you. Richard smiled faintly. Let them talk. My wealth doesn't come from attending parties. It comes from hard work, vision, and discipline. And none of it would mean anything without you. If they can't understand that, they can lose my support. Anna's eyes softened. She had always admired his strength in business, but this moment showed her another kind of strength, loyalty to the woman he loved. Meanwhile, at the Grand Royal Hotel, the gala was in full swing. Guests laughed, toasted with champagne, and discussed politics, movies, and fortunes. But as time passed, people began to notice something unusual. Where's Richard? One man whispered to his friend. He's always the first to arrive. Strange that he's not here yet, another replied. The organizers grew restless. They had counted on his presence to impress their sponsors. He was not only a guest, he was the guest. His arrival always brought prestige and media attention. But now, his empty seat stood out like a missing jewel in a crown. The whispers grew louder. Some said he was delayed. Others wondered if he had chosen not to come. A few even smirked, suggesting he might be offended by something. Finally, one of the organizers decided to call him. She stepped out of the ballroom, phone in hand, and dialed his number. "Mr. Richard," she said politely when he answered, "we're waiting for you. The gala has already started. Everyone is asking about you." Richard's voice was calm but firm. "I will not be attending." The woman froze. "Not attending? But, why, sir? This event is important. Your absence will cause questions." "You erased my wife's name from the guest list," Richard replied. His tone was sharp enough to cut through her excuses. "You thought she wasn't good enough to sit with your glamorous guests. If my wife isn't welcome, then neither am I." The woman stammered, "Sir, it must have been a misunderstanding." "No," Richard interrupted. "I know it wasn't. You judged her for being simple. But understand this, she is my wife, my partner, and the reason I stand where I do today. Without her, I am not the man you want at your gala. Respect her, or lose me. That's my final word." Before she could respond, he ended the call. Inside the ballroom, the organizers tried to keep the news quiet, but it didn't take long for whispers to spread. "Richard isn't coming," someone murmured. "Why not?" another asked. Soon, pieces of the truth began to flow through the crowd. Some guests gasped. Others exchanged guilty glances, realizing the decision to exclude Anna had backfired. One woman whispered to her friend, "Can you believe it? He refused to attend because of her. That's real loyalty." Another guest, shaking his head, said, "They underestimated him. They thought he cared only about money and power. But he cares about his wife more." Back at home, Anna sat quietly beside Richard, still amazed at his decision. "Do you realize what you've done?" she asked softly. "Yes," he answered with a calm smile. "I've shown them that my success is not greater than my respect for you. And if they regret it, so be it." The next morning, newspapers and online news platforms were flooded with headlines. "Billionaire refuses to attend gala over wife's exclusion." Some articles praised him for his bold stand. Others criticized the organizers for their poor judgment. Social media buzzed with admiration. "True love still exists," one comment read. "This man values his wife more than status. Respect." Another post said, "They thought she wasn't good enough. Now they'll regret ever erasing her." Anna read some of the comments and felt overwhelmed. She had never wanted to be in the spotlight, but this time, she wasn't being judged for her simplicity. She was being admired for being the woman her husband respected so deeply. At the Grand Royal Hotel, the organizers sat in their offices, panicked. The absence of Richard had caused a chain reaction. Sponsors were upset, the media criticized them, and several influential guests left the gala early, disappointed. Their perfect night had turned into a scandal. One of the senior organizers shook his head in regret. "We thought we were protecting the image of the event. But in trying to exclude one woman, we ruined everything." Anna, however, didn't take joy in their regret. She simply held Richard's hand and said, "Thank you for standing by me." He smiled. "Always, Anna. Always." The morning after the gala, the city woke up not to photographs of glamorous gowns or sparkling chandeliers, but to headlines that carried a very different story. Newspapers across the country displayed the same bold words on their front pages: "Billionaire refuses to attend gala after wife is excluded." On television, reporters replayed the story again and again. Some showed footage of the event, where guests whispered and looked uncomfortable as they noticed Richard's absence. Others shared interviews with people who had attended. One businessman, when asked why the gala felt so tense, replied carefully, "Well, everyone expected Richard. He is the life of these events. But he didn't come. And when we heard the reason, let's just say the organizers will never forget it. Social media was even louder. Thousands of posts appeared within hours. Some shared admiration, finally, a man who values love over status. This is what true loyalty looks like. Respect to Richard. She may be simple, but she is more valuable than all the glitter in that ballroom. Others criticized the organizers. How could they erase her name? Who gave them the right to decide who is worthy? They tried to humiliate her, and instead, they humiliated themselves. Anna sat at the breakfast table, holding a cup of tea, scrolling through the flood of messages on her phone. She felt overwhelmed. Never in her life had she been the center of so much attention. For years, she had been quiet, unnoticed, even looked down upon by some. But now, the whole world seemed to be standing with her. Richard sat across from her, calmly reading the paper. He glanced up and smiled. "See, Anna. They thought they could erase you. But now your name is everywhere." Anna shook her head softly. "I never wanted fame, Richard. I only ever wanted to be by your side. And that," Richard said firmly, "is why you are irreplaceable." Meanwhile, the organizers of the gala were facing a storm. What was supposed to be their biggest night had turned into a disaster. Sponsors were furious. Some called the next morning to say they would not support future events. Journalists criticized them for their shallow decisions. Guests complained that the evening had lost its charm without Richard. In their office, the organizers sat in silence, their faces heavy with regret. One of them finally spoke. "We thought we were protecting the image of the gala. Instead, we destroyed it." Another added, "We underestimated her. We thought her simplicity made her unfit. But now the whole world sees her as more noble than us." Their regret deepened when they realized that Richard's refusal was not just about skipping an event. It was a message to all of society, a message that true worth is not found in diamonds, gowns, or guest lists, but in respect, loyalty, and love. In the days that followed, magazines began to write stories about Anna. But unlike before, when they might have judged her clothing or her quiet nature, now they praised her. One article read, "She is the woman who proved that elegance is not about jewels or fame. Her dignity, her humility, and her husband's devotion have made her a symbol of what truly matters." Another wrote, "For years, people whispered that she did not belong. Now, everyone wants to learn from her simplicity." Anna was surprised by this sudden attention. She never asked for it, and she didn't change who she was because of it. She continued living the same way, cooking her meals, wearing her simple dresses, and spending time with her husband. But now, when she walked into shops or met people in the street, there was a new look in their eyes. Not pity. Not judgment. Respect. One afternoon, while buying flowers from a small market stall, the vendor looked at her warmly and said, "Madam, you've shown us all what real class looks like. May God bless you." Anna smiled shyly and thanked him. She carried the flowers home, her heart filled with quiet peace. At the same time, Richard's influence made sure the lesson was not forgotten. When the organizers of the gala tried to arrange another event months later, they found it nearly impossible. Sponsors hesitated, guests were cautious, and the shadow of their past mistake followed them everywhere. People whispered, "These are the ones who insulted the billionaire's wife. Can we really trust their judgment again?" Their reputation never fully recovered. The regret of excluding one woman had cost them everything they had worked to build. For Anna and Richard, however, life continued beautifully. They grew even closer after the incident. One evening, as they sat together in their garden, Anna finally spoke about what had happened. "Richard," she said softly, "why did you fight so hard for me? You could have gone to the gala, kept your influence, and no one would have blamed you." Richard turned to her, his eyes steady. "Anna, all my wealth, all my power, means nothing if I can't protect your dignity. They tried to erase you, but you are the heart of my life. How could I allow anyone to treat you as less than you are? Tears filled Anna's eyes, but they were tears of gratitude, not sadness. She leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for loving me." He kissed her forehead gently. Always. The world eventually moved on to new headlines, new events, and new stories. But the memory of that one night stayed alive in people's hearts. It became a reminder that respect and love are more valuable than wealth and status. Whenever people spoke of the gala that year, they didn't talk about the gowns, the chandeliers, or the champagne. They talked about Richard's stand for his wife. They talked about Anna, the simple woman who was once erased but had become unforgettable. And in the quiet of their home, away from cameras and flashing lights, Anna continued being herself, the woman who needed no jewels to shine, because her true beauty was in her heart.